Ambassador Sarah Chun stood in the center of the Great Hall. The room was huge, bigger than any building she had ever seen on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Above her head, the ceiling stretched. So high that she could barely see the top dot. All around her sat the representatives of 47 different alien species. Some looked almost human, but most were very different. The Zephyrians looked like living glass sculptures that changed color when they moved. The Corvinth were twice as tall as humans, with thick gray skin and sharp teeth. The hegemony delegates had 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Sarah had been coming to this place for 3 years now. She was Earth's voice in the Galactic Council, speaking for all of humanity. For 300 years, humans had been part of this great alliance of species that ruled most of the galaxy. They were the newest members, still trying to prove they belonged here among the stars. But today was different. Today, Sarah knew she was not here to speak for Earth. She was here to listen to Earth's punishment. The charges were read in the old language that all council members had to learn. Sarah understood every word, even though they felt like ice in her heart. The council said humans had built too many warships. They said humans had taken over too many planets. Worst of all, they said humans refused to give up their old ways of governing themselves. The alien species around her made sounds of agreement. Some clicked their claws against their chairs. Others made low humming noises. The Zephyrians flashed bright, angry colors. They all thought the same thing about humans. Sarah thought about all the human colonies spread across dozens of star systems. Each one had its own government, its own laws, its own way of doing things. This was how humans had always lived, even back on Earth. But the council wanted all members to follow the same rules, to think the same way, to become part of one big government that the council controlled. Humans had refused. They said they would follow council laws when dealing with other species, but they wanted to keep their own ways at home. This made the other species angry and afraid. High Arbiter Veltar of the Hegemony stood up to speak. He was the leader of the council, chosen by all the species to make the final decisions. His 4 arms moved as he talked, and his red eyes glowed brighter. The human species has shown that they cannot follow council law, he said. His voice was deep and echoed through the Great Hall. They build ships when we tell them not to. They make colonies when we say they have enough. They keep their old governments when we tell them to join the council system. Sarah wanted to speak, to defend her people, but this was not the time. For that, the trial was over. This was the judgment. For 300 years, we have tried to teach them our ways, Veltar continued. We have been patient. We have given them chances. But they do not learn. They do not change. They remain what they have always been, a wild species that cannot be tamed. The other representatives made more sounds of agreement. Sarah saw some of them looking at her with what might have been pity. Others looked angry or disgusted. A few seemed almost pleased that this day had finally come. The vote will now be taken, Veltar announced. All in favor of removing humanity from the Galactic Council? One by one, the species voted. The Zephyrians flashed white, which meant yes. The Corvinth raised their right hands. The bird-like aviarians sang a high note. Each species had their own way of voting, but the meaning was always the same. Yes. 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 40-6 species voted to throw humanity out of the council. Only the humans voted no, but Sarah's voice was lost among all the others. When the voting was done, Veltar stood again. The great hall became completely quiet. Even Sarah could hear her own heart beating. By the ancient laws of the council, humanity is no longer a member of our alliance, Veltar said. All treaties between humans and council species are ended. All trade agreements are canceled. All cooperation is finished. He paused, and his red eyes seemed to look right through Sarah. "You have 7 of your solar cycles to remove all humans from Council space," he continued. "Every human colony, every human ship, every human person must return to your home system. After 7 cycles, any human found in Council territory will be treated as an enemy." Sarah felt her legs go weak, but she forced herself to stay standing. 7 solar cycles meant 7 Earth years. It seemed like a long time, but she knew it was not nearly enough. There were millions of humans living on hundreds of worlds. Moving them all would be the biggest challenge her species had ever faced. "Do you understand these terms?" Veltar asked her directly. Sarah looked around the hall. One more time. She saw species that humans had fought beside in wars. She saw others that humans had helped when disasters struck their worlds. She saw some that humans had saved from extinction. But none of that mattered now. Fear was stronger than friendship, and the Council was afraid of what humans might become. "I understand," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was breaking. But then she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She smiled. "But I want you to remember this day," she said, speaking loudly enough for every being in the hall to hear. "You are making the biggest mistake in Council history. You think you are getting rid of a problem, but you are creating something much bigger than a problem." Veltar's eyes grew brighter. "Explain your meaning, human." Sarah took a deep breath. She thought about her home planet, blue and green and beautiful, spinning around its yellow star. She thought about the human colonies, full of people who had left everything behind to build new lives among the stars. She thought about the human ships, sleek and fast, and built by people who never gave up. "You are freeing us," she said simply. "For 300 years, we have followed your rules, used your technology, lived by your laws. We did this because we wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. But maybe we were wrong. Maybe we were not meant to be just another member of your council." The hall was completely silent now. Every being was listening to her words. "You want us to go back to our home system and stay there like good little pets," Sarah continued. "But humans do not make good pets. We never have. We explore, we build, we grow. We never stop pushing forward, no matter what stands in our way." She looked directly at Veltar, meeting his burning red gaze without fear. "So yes, we will leave your space. We will take our people and our ships and our colonies. But we will not go quietly into the dark. We will build something new, something better. And someday, when you need our help, you will remember that you could have had us as friends." With that, Sarah turned and walked toward the great doors of the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind her, she could hear whispers starting among the representatives. Some sounded worried now. Others sounded angry. But Sarah did not look back. She had delivered humanity's last message to the Galactic Council. Now it was time to go home and prepare for the greatest challenge her species had ever faced. They had 7 years to leave Council space and start over somewhere else. 7 years to prove that humanity did not need the Council to survive among the stars. 7 years to build an empire of their own. The message reached every human colony within 3 days. From the mining stations around Kepler 442 to the farming worlds in the Centauri cluster, the same words appeared on screens and speakers across human space. Admiral Marcus Webb had written it himself, sitting in his office on Luna Command while Earth turned slowly below him. All human citizens living in Council territory must return to Earth system immediately, the message said. We have 7 years to complete evacuation. This is not a request. This is an order for the survival of our species. Webb watched the responses come in from across the galaxy. Some colony governors were angry. Others were scared. A few asked, if this was some kind of joke. But Webb knew it was real. He had been in contact with Ambassador Chun since the moment she left the council chambers. The easy thing would have been to panic. The smart thing might have been to negotiate, to beg the council for more time or better terms. But humans had never been known for doing the easy or smart thing. They were known for doing the impossible. Webb called a meeting of all the colony leaders. Using quantum communication arrays that stretched across dozens of star systems, he brought together the voices of humanity's far-flung empire. Governors, mayors, ship captains, and station commanders all appeared on his screen at once. They want us to come crawling back to Earth with our tails between our legs, Webb told them. They think we will abandon everything we have built and hide in our home system like scared children. They are wrong. Captain Maria Santos spoke from the screen. She led the colony on New Terra, one of the most successful human settlements outside Earth system. What are you suggesting, Admiral? We cannot fight the entire council. We are not going to fight them, Webb replied. We are going to leave, just like they want. But we are not leaving empty-handed. He activated a star map that showed all of human space. Red dots marked the colonies that were inside council territory. Blue dots showed the independent human settlements that had been built beyond council borders. There were fewer blue dots, but they were spread across a much larger area. We are going to take everything, Webb announced. Every building, every machine, every piece of technology we can move. We strip our colonies down to the bare rock and transfer it all to the independent settlements. By the time we are done, the council will get back empty worlds while we will have built the foundation of something much bigger. The colony leaders stared at him through their screens. Some looked confused. Others looked excited. A few looked like they thought he had lost his mind. Dr. Elena Vasquez was the first to speak. She ran the research station at Alpha Centauri, where human scientists had been working on projects that made the council nervous. Marcus, what you are talking about is the largest moving operation in history. We would have to transport entire cities across hundreds of light years. Yes, Webb said simply. That is exactly what we are going to do. The plan was crazy enough that it might actually work. Every human colony had been built using modular construction. Buildings could be taken apart and put back together somewhere else. Factories were designed to be moved when resources ran out. Even the planetary defense systems could be dismantled and relocated. What made it possible was the one thing the Council had always underestimated about humans: their willingness to sacrifice for each other. When the evacuation order went out, volunteers came forward from every corner of human space. People left comfortable jobs on established worlds to help build new colonies on harsh frontier planets. Families packed up their entire lives and moved to places where the air was still being made breathable, and the ground was just being prepared for farming. The Great Consolidation, as historians would later call it, began 6 months after the Council's judgment. The first phase involved moving the smaller outposts and research stations. These were easier to dismantle and transport, and they served as practice for the bigger operations to come. Captain Lisa Park commanded one of the transport fleets. Her ships carried the entire population of Research Station Gamma 7 along with all their equipment and data. The station had been studying alien plant life that might be useful for terraforming. Now that research would continue on a new world beyond Council reach. The hardest part is not the moving, Park wrote in her personal log. The hardest part is watching people say goodbye to homes they have lived in for decades. But there is something beautiful about it too. These people are not running away. They are running towards something better. The big colonies took much longer to move. New Terra had over 2 million people and cities that stretched across 3 continents. Moving everyone and everything would take years, but the colonists threw themselves into the work with the same determination their ancestors had shown when, first leaving Earth. The Council watched all this activity with growing confusion. They had expected humans to comply with the evacuation order, but not like this. Reports came back to the Council chambers describing massive human fleets carrying industrial equipment, entire research labs, and even pieces of planetary infrastructure. Some Council members began to worry that they had made a mistake. High Arbiter Veltar dismissed these concerns. "Let them take their toys," he told the other Council leaders. "Without our protection and our trade networks, they will struggle to survive on their frontier worlds. In a few decades, they will come back begging to rejoin us." But the humans were not just moving their colonies. They were improving them. Dr. Vasquez led a team of scientists who used the evacuation time to upgrade everything they could. Better. Fusion reactors replaced the old ones. New manufacturing systems that could build almost anything were installed on every world. Advanced life support systems that could turn the most hostile planet into a garden were tested and deployed. "We are not just moving," Dr. Vasquez explained to her research team. "We are evolving. The Council made us follow their rules and use their technology. Now we can build things our way." The improvements were dramatic. Human technology had always been different from Council designs. Where Council species built things to last forever, humans built things to be changed and improved. Where Council technology was safe and predictable, human technology was experimental and flexible. Freed from Council regulations, human engineers could finally push the boundaries of what was possible. The new colonies that rose beyond Council space were unlike anything humans had built before. Cities that could change their layout based on the weather. Factories that could switch from building starships to growing food with just a few hours of reprogramming. Defense systems that learned from each attack and became stronger. But the most important change was not in the technology. It was in the people. As the evacuation continued, humans began to see themselves differently. They were no longer junior, members of someone else's civilization. They were pioneers building something entirely new. Communities that had been separate for generations came together during the move. Scientists worked alongside farmers. Soldiers helped build schools. Artists designed new flags and symbols for worlds that had not existed 5 years before. The shared struggle of the evacuation created bonds that were stronger than any government or law. By the 4th year, the transformation was complete. The red dots on Admiral Webb's map had gone dark one by one as the Council colonies were abandoned. But the blue dots had multiplied and grown brighter. Where once there had been a handful of struggling frontier settlements, now there was a network of thriving worlds that stretched across a quarter of the galaxy. The final evacuation ship left Council space exactly 7 years after the judgment, just as the deadline required. But something else happened on that same day. The independent human colonies formally declared themselves the Terran Commonwealth, a new nation among the stars with its own laws, its own military, and its own destiny. Ambassador Chun, now serving as the Commonwealth's first foreign minister, sent a message to the Council. It was short and polite, but it carried a meaning that would echo through history. "The evacuation is complete," the message said. "Humanity thanks the Council for teaching use that we never needed your permission to be great." 5 years had passed since the last human ship left Council space. In the great shipyards orbiting New Canberra, the sound of construction never stopped. Massive metal frameworks stretched for kilometers in every direction, holding the skeletons of ships that would make even Council admirals nervous. Captain James Rodriguez walked through the main construction bay, watching hundreds of workers in zero-gravity suits attach armor plating to the hull of the newest battlecruiser. The ship was enormous, twice the size of anything humans had built while they were Council members. But size was not the most impressive thing about it. The impressive thing was how different it looked from any other ship in the galaxy. Council. Ships were built like fortresses, thick and heavy, and designed to last for centuries without major changes. Human ships looked like they were ready to pounce. They had smooth curves and sharp angles that suggested speed and power. Every line of the hull was designed for one purpose: to move fast and hit hard. How long until she is ready? Rodriguez asked the construction chief. 3 more months for this one, the chief replied. But we already have 20 more, just like her, in various stages of construction. The Indomitable class is going to be the backbone of our new fleet. Rodriguez nodded as he studied the ship's design plans on his tablet. The weapons systems alone were revolutionary. Instead of the steady, predictable energy beams that Council ships used, human vessels carried rapid-fire plasma cannons that could overwhelm enemy shields with pure volume of fire. The engines used a new type of fusion drive that could push the ships to speeds that violated several Council safety regulations. But the real breakthrough was in the ship's computer systems. Council vessels relied on centralized command networks that made them vulnerable to system failures. Human ships used distributed processing that allowed every part of the vessel to think and react independently. If the bridge was destroyed, the engineering section could still fight the ship. If the weapons were damaged, the engines could be used as weapons. The Council taught us to build by their rules, Rodriguez said to himself as he watched the workers. Now we build by ours. The shipyards were just one part of what was happening across Commonwealth space. On the planet Haven, construction crews were building the new capital city of New Geneva. Unlike the ancient Council capital with its formal chambers and rigid protocols, New Geneva was designed to be flexible and democratic. President Elena Santos stood on the steps of the new Parliament building, looking out at the growing city. She had been elected just 6 months ago in the Commonwealth's first system-wide election. Every human colony had been allowed to vote, from the biggest worlds with millions of people to the smallest research stations with just a few hundred inhabitants. The election itself had been remarkable. Instead of the appointed positions and hereditary titles that dominated Council governance, every leader in the Commonwealth had to earn their position through the support of the people they served. Santos had won not because of her family connections or her species affiliation, but because humans across dozens of worlds believed she could lead them into the future. Citizens of the Commonwealth, Santos said to the cameras that would broadcast her speech across human space, we stand at a moment in history that our ancestors could never have imagined. 5 years ago, we were exiles, cast out by those who feared what we might become. Today, we are the founders of a new kind of civilization. She gestured toward the city growing around them. Construction robots worked alongside human crews to build structures that combined the best of human engineering with technologies learned from their former Council partners. But everything was built the human way, modular, adaptable, ready to be improved as new ideas emerged. We were told that we were too aggressive, too independent, too unwilling to accept the wisdom of our elders, Santos continued. We were told that we would fail without the Council's guidance. They were wrong about the failure, but they were right about one thing. We are different. We do not accept that the way things have always been done is the way they must always be done. The Commonwealth's growth was unprecedented in galactic history. What had started as a handful of frontier colonies had become a network of over 100 worlds in just 5 years. Each new planet that joined brought something valuable: resources, expertise, population, or simply the strategic advantage of another foothold among the stars. But the Commonwealth's real strength was not in its size or its technology. It was in its philosophy. Unlike the Council's rigid caste system, where each species had a predetermined role, the Commonwealth operated on pure merit. It did not matter what world you came from or what you looked like. If you had the skills and the dedication, you could rise to any position. This attracted people from across the galaxy. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had been one of the Council's top xenobiologists before she defected to the Commonwealth. The Council's research committees had blocked her work for years, claiming it was too dangerous or too theoretical. In the Commonwealth, she was given unlimited funding and a team of the brightest minds from a dozen different species. The Council talks about diversity, Dr. Tanaka explained to her new research team. They have representatives from dozens of species, and they think that makes them wise. But they all think the same way. They all follow the same rules. They all fear the same changes. True diversity is not about what you look like. It is about how you think. Her team included humans, of course, but also several alien species that had grown tired of Council restrictions. The Kithara were master engineers, whose homeworld had been strip-mined by Council, mandate to provide resources for other species. They brought construction techniques that could build cities in space or underwater with equal ease. The Wanderer fleets had roamed the galaxy for centuries, never settling on any world, but serving as traders and explorers. They found purpose in Commonwealth exploration missions, using their knowledge of hidden jump routes and uncharted systems to help the growing nation expand safely. Even some species that were still officially Council members began sending research, exchanges, and cultural missions to Commonwealth space. These diplomatic missions often included their best scientists and engineers, who coincidentally discovered that their research was much more productive in Commonwealth laboratories. Council watched all of this with growing alarm. Reports flowed into the chambers on Nexus Prime, describing human fleets that seemed to appear and disappear at will, colonies that sprang up overnight on worlds that should have been uninhabitable, and technologies that violated everything the Council thought they knew about physics. High Arbiter Veltar called emergency sessions to discuss the human problem. Some Council members suggested military action to stop Commonwealth expansion before it became unstoppable. Others argued for diplomatic contact to establish boundaries and prevent conflicts. They are like a cancer, declared Representative Kraz of the hegemony. Every year they grow larger and stronger. Every year more species are tempted to join them or copy their methods. If we do not act soon, they will become too powerful to control. But other voices in the Council urged caution. The Zephyrians, who had always been among the most cautious species, pointed out that the Commonwealth had not attacked any Council worlds or threatened any Council citizens. Their expansion was happening in unclaimed space or on worlds that freely chose to join them. Perhaps, suggested Elder Zara of the Crystalline Collective, we should ask ourselves why so many choose to leave our protection for theirs. What are they offering that we are not? The question hung in the Council chambers like an uncomfortable truth that no one wanted to acknowledge. For 1,000 years, the Council had been the ultimate authority in the galaxy. Species joined them for protection, for trade, for the privilege of being part of something larger than themselves. The idea that someone might build something better was almost impossible to accept, but the evidence was mounting. Commonwealth worlds reported higher standards of living, faster technological advancement, and greater personal freedom than most Council colonies. Their military, though smaller than the Council's combined forces, was clearly more advanced and more flexible. Most disturbing of all, they seemed genuinely happy. President Santos ended her speech with words that would be remembered long after the buildings around her had crumbled to dust. "We did not choose exile," she said, "but we embrace the freedom it has given us. We will continue to grow, to explore, to build something worthy of the best that thinking beings can achieve. Not through fear or force, but through the simple belief that every individual has the right to reach for the stars." As her words spread across Commonwealth space and beyond, a new chapter in galactic history was being written. The exiles had become empire builders, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first sign that something had changed came through the Council's intelligence networks. Agent Crix of the Hegemony Security Division sat in his darkened office on Nexus Prime, reading reports that made no sense. According to his sources, massive human fleets were operating in the Outer Rim territories. Not the small exploration groups or merchant convoys that might be expected from a recently exiled species, but full battle fleets with hundreds of ships. "This cannot be accurate," Crix muttered as he studied the data. His best informants reported human colonies on worlds that his own scientists had declared uninhabitable. Mining operations that extracted resources faster than Council technology. Should allow shipyards that built vessels in months rather than years. More disturbing were the reports of alien species joining the humans voluntarily. Entire Cathara engineering guilds had vanished from Council space, only to resurface in Commonwealth territory. Wanderer fleets that had traded with the Council for centuries now avoided Council stations entirely. Even some minor Council member species were asking uncomfortable questions about their membership benefits. Crix sent his findings up the chain of command, but High Arbiter Veltar dismissed them as exaggerations. Primitive species often seem more advanced to those who observe them from a distance, Veltar declared. The humans are probably using outdated Council technology and calling it innovation. They will collapse within a decade when their equipment breaks down and they have no one to repair it. But the reports kept coming, and they kept getting more incredible. Human ships that moved faster than anything in Council databases. Energy weapons that produced power outputs beyond known safety limits. Defensive systems that seemed to violate several laws of physics. The Council's certainty began to crack when long-range sensors detected something that should have been impossible. A large fleet was approaching the edge of Council space, moving in perfect formation and broadcasting Commonwealth identification codes. The ships were sleek and powerful, clearly built for war, but flying under diplomatic flags. High Arbiter Veltar stared at the tactical display in the Council's command center. 24 ships approached Nexus Prime, led by a massive vessel that dwarfed even the Council's heaviest battleships. The fleet moved with a precision and confidence that spoke of long experience and superior training. "Should we activate the defense grid?" asked General Morvac of the Corvinth Defense Forces. Veltar considered the question. The approaching fleet could probably destroy the orbital defenses around Nexus Prime if they chose to fight. But they were flying diplomatic flags and had requested permission to enter Council space through proper channels. Attacking them without, 'cause would make the Council look weak and afraid. Let them approach, Veltar decided, but keep all defenses ready. The Commonwealth flagship that entered orbit around Nexus Prime was a work of art disguised as a weapon. The hull curved and flowed like liquid metal, but sensor scans revealed armor that was stronger than anything the Council had ever developed. Weapon ports were hidden beneath smooth surfaces that could open and fire in milliseconds. The engines glowed with a blue light that indicated fusion technology far beyond Council standards. Ambassador David Park materialized in the Council chambers 3 hours later, transported down from his ship by a matter transmission system that made several Council scientists very nervous. He was younger than Sarah Chun had been, but he carried himself with the same quiet confidence that had marked her final speech to the Council. "Honored representatives," Park said as he bowed slightly to the assembled aliens around him. "The Terran Commonwealth extends greetings to the Galactic Council and formally requests the establishment of diplomatic relations between our sovereign governments." The silence that followed was complete. For several long seconds, no one in the chamber moved or spoke. The words Park had used were simple enough, but their implications were staggering. He was not requesting to rejoin the Council as a member. Species. He was asking for recognition as an equal power. Representative Cross of the hegemony was the first to find his voice. You speak as if your collection of exile colonies constitutes a legitimate government. The Council does not recognize territorial claims made in violation of our original exile decree. Park smiled politely. With respect, Representative Cross, the Commonwealth controls over 300 star systems and governs more than 50 billion sentient beings. Our territory extends across regions of space that the Council has never visited, let alone claimed. We are not asking for your permission to exist. We are offering to establish formal relations with your government. The number of systems under Commonwealth control sent whispers through the chamber. 300 systems represented more territory than many Council member species controlled. If the human was telling the truth, they had built an empire that rivaled the largest powers in known space. High Arbiter Veltar leaned forward in his chair. You claim to control 300 systems. You claim to govern 50 billion beings. These are impressive numbers, Ambassador Park. But numbers can be fabricated. How do we know you speak the truth? Because we brought proof, Park replied simply. He activated a holographic projector that filled the center of the chamber with a three-dimensional map of Commonwealth space. Star systems glowed in blue light, connected by trade routes and communication networks. Each system showed detailed information about population, resources, military assets, and industrial capacity. The Council representatives stared at the display in growing amazement and alarm. The Commonwealth was not just larger than they had imagined. It was more advanced, more organized, and more powerful than most Council member species. Worse yet, it was still growing. New systems were being added every month as more species chose to join the humans rather than remain under Council protection. This is impossible, whispered Elder Zara of the Crystalline Collective. No species has ever expanded so quickly or achieved such technological advancement in such a short time. Humans are not like other species, Park explained. We do not accept that something is impossible simply because it has never been done before. When you exiled us, you forced us to stop following your rules and start following our own. The results speak for themselves. The holographic display shifted to show Commonwealth military assets. The numbers were smaller than the Council's combined forces, but the technology was clearly superior. Commonwealth ships moved faster, hit harder, and defended better than anything in Council fleets. More importantly, they were organized under a unified command structure that could respond to threats in days rather than months. Representative Cross stood up angrily. This display proves nothing except that humans remain as arrogant and aggressive as ever. You flaunt your military power and demand recognition as our equals. This is exactly why the Council expelled you in the first place. With respect, Park replied calmly, we are not demanding anything. We are offering something. The Commonwealth wishes to establish trade relations, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements with the Council. We believe both our civilizations would benefit from cooperation rather than isolation. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Traditional hardliners like Cross demanded that the Council reject any recognition of Commonwealth legitimacy. They argued that accepting the humans as equals would encourage other species to rebel against Council authority. If the exiled humans could build a successful civilization, why should anyone remain loyal to the old ways? But other voices urged caution and pragmatism. The Zephyrians pointed out that the Commonwealth had not attacked any Council worlds or threatened any Council citizens. Their expansion was happening in unclaimed space, and their success was achieved through innovation rather than conquest. Some species were even secretly impressed by what the humans had accomplished. Perhaps, suggested Elder Zara during a recess, we should ask ourselves what we can learn from their success rather than how we can destroy it. The decision was taken out of the Council's hands when emergency. Alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Prime. Long-range sensors had detected something approaching from beyond the galactic rim. A massive fleet of unknown origin was moving toward Council space at impossible speeds, leaving destroyed worlds in their wake. The sensor officer's report was transmitted directly to the Council chambers. Unknown fleet composition estimated at over 10,000 vessels. Technology appears to be completely alien. They have destroyed 3 frontier colonies and show no signs of slowing down. Estimated arrival at the outer Council systems in 36 standard days. High Arbiter Veltar stared at the tactical display, showing the approaching threat. The alien fleet was larger than anything the Council had ever faced, and their weapons seemed capable of destroying entire planets. Even more terrifying, they showed no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply appeared, destroyed everything in their path, and moved on. The Devourers, Ambassador Park said quietly, using a name that would stick throughout the coming war. We have been tracking their approach for several months. Our long-range scouts first detected them beyond the Andromeda relay stations. All eyes in the chamber turned to the human ambassador. You knew about this threat? Veltar demanded. The first battle against the Devourers was a disaster. The Council fleet that met them at the Rim Station outpost followed traditional tactics that had worked for 1,000 years. Heavy battleships formed defensive lines, while smaller vessels provided support fire. It was a strategy that had defeated every enemy the Council had ever faced. The Devourers tore through the formation in less than 20 minutes. Admiral Sarah Chon watched the battle recordings from the bridge of her flagship, the CN's Defiance. She had come out of retirement when the war began, called back to service by a commonwealth that needed her experience. Now she studied the alien tactics with growing concern. They do not fight like any species we have encountered, reported Commander Torres, her tactical officer. No formation flying, no command structure we can identify. Each ship seems to operate independently while somehow coordinating perfectly with the others. Chun nodded as she watched Devourer vessels flow around Council defenses like water around rocks. Their ships were organic-looking things that seemed to grow rather than being built. They moved in ways that violated physics, turning impossibly sharp corners and accelerating beyond what their apparent mass should allow. Intelligence. Estimates? Chun asked. Over 10,000 ships confirmed, but they keep appearing from nowhere, Torres replied. We think they have some kind of dimensional drive that lets them jump directly into combat without using normal hyperspace routes. And Admiral, their weapons ... double quotes. Chon had seen the weapons. Devourer ships fired beams of energy that seemed to unmake matter at the molecular level. Anything they hit simply stopped existing. Council shields, armor, even the empty space around their targets was consumed by the alien weapons. The intercom crackled to life. Admiral Chun to the communications center immediately. Chun found Ambassador Park waiting for her in the ship's main communications room. Behind him on the screen was High Arbiter Veltar, calling from the Council Command Center on Nexus Prime. The alien leader looked older than Chun remembered, his red eyes dim with exhaustion and fear. Admiral Chun, Veltar said without preamble. A council formally requests Commonwealth assistance in coordinating our joint defense efforts. We are prepared to place all Council military forces under your command. The words must have tasted like poison in the Arbiter's mouth. For 1,000 years, the Council had been the supreme military power in the galaxy. Now they were asking the species they had exiled to save them from destruction. What are your terms? Chon asked. No terms, Veltar replied. We are fighting. For survival, pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. Chun studied the alien leader's face on the screen. She could see the cost this admission had taken. But she could also see something else: genuine respect. The Council had finally understood what humans had been trying to tell them for centuries. Strength came not from rigid hierarchies and ancient traditions, but from the willingness to adapt and change when circumstances demanded it. "I accept command," Chun said simply. "Transmit all fleet positions and tactical data to my staff immediately. We have 3 days to prepare our defense at Sanctuary." Sanctuary was a fortress world that guarded the approach to the Council's core systems. It was surrounded by massive defense platforms and protected by the largest concentration of military ships in known space. If the combined Council-Commonwealth fleet could not stop the devourers there, nothing could. The preparations that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. Council ships that had been built to different standards and operated under completely different doctrines had to be integrated with Commonwealth vessels that used unfamiliar technology and tactics. Human commanders found themselves giving orders to alien crews who had never worked with human methods. Alien officers struggled to understand Commonwealth battle strategies that emphasized speed and flexibility over raw firepower. But somehow, it worked. Dr. Yuki Tanaka led teams of mixed-species engineers who found ways to link Council and Commonwealth systems. Kithara construction experts worked alongside human technicians to upgrade weapons and shields on both types of ships. Wanderer navigators shared their knowledge of hidden jump routes that could be used to outflank the approaching enemy. "What you are seeing," Dr. Tanaka explained to a group of Council scientists, "is the power of true cooperation. Not the artificial unity the Council imposed, but genuine partnership between equals who choose to work together." The defense of Sanctuary began when long-range sensors detected the devourer fleet dropping out of their dimensional drive at the HFY edge of the system. Chun studied the tactical display from her command chair, watching as thousands of alien vessels formed their impossible formations. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun," she broadcast on the combined fleet frequency. "Today we fight not as Council or Commonwealth, but as free beings defending our right to exist. Show them what cooperation can accomplish." The battle that followed was the largest space engagement in recorded history. Over 8,000 ships from dozens of different species fought against an enemy that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of physics and tactics. The Council ships fought bravely, but their rigid formations quickly broke down under the Devourer assault. The aliens moved too fast and struck too hard for traditional tactics to work. Within the first hour, it looked like Sanctuary would fall just as quickly as the Rim Station had. Then the Commonwealth ships showed what they had learned during their years of exile. Human vessels broke from the main formation and began attacking the Devourers using hit-and-run tactics. They would appear from unexpected angles, strike hard, and disappear before the enemy could respond effectively. But more importantly, they began teaching these tactics to their Council allies in real time. Commonwealth ship commanders broadcast their attack patterns and shared their targeting data with nearby Council vessels. Slowly, the rigid Council formations began to evolve into something more flexible and deadly. "Follow the humans," ordered Captain Zeke of the Corvinth Heavy Cruiser Vengeance. Match their movements and learn their methods. The turning point came when a group of Devourer ships broke through the main defense line and headed straight for Sanctuary's orbital cities. Millions of civilians would die if the aliens reached their targets. The only ship positioned to intercept them was Chun's flagship, the Defiance. Chun looked around her bridge at the mixed crew of humans and aliens who had volunteered to serve under her command. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. We are going to show these things what happens when they threaten innocent people." The Defiance accelerated toward the lead Devourer ship, its weapons firing continuously. The alien vessel was larger and more heavily armed, but Chun's ship had something the enemy did not expect: the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. At the last moment, Chun activated the ship's self-destruct sequence and rammed the Defiance directly into the Devourers' core. The explosion lit up the entire battlefield and destroyed both vessels instantly. Chun's final transmission echoed across the combined fleet: for Earth, for the Council, for everyone who refuses to kneel to tyrants. The sacrifice rallied both fleets. Human ships pressed their attacks with renewed fury, while Council vessels adopted the aggressive tactics they had learned from their former enemies. Working together, they began to push the Devourers back for the first time since the war began. Battle lasted 18 hours. When it finally ended, the Devourer fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind the wreckage of thousands of their ships. The combined Council-Commonwealth force had won, but the cost was enormous. Nearly half their ships were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. In the aftermath, High Arbiter Veltar came aboard the Commonwealth command ship to meet with the surviving fleet commanders. He found Admiral Park, who had taken command after Chun's death, standing in the ship's memorial hall where the names of the fallen were being inscribed on crystalline walls. "I owe you an apology," Veltar said quietly. "The Council was wrong about humanity. We thought your independence was a threat to order and stability. We did not understand that it was your greatest strength." Park looked up from the memorial wall where Sarah Chun's name had just been added. "She told you this would happen, you know. Not the war, but the moment when you would realize that cooperation is stronger than control." Veltar studied the names on the wall. Humans, Kithara, Corvinth, Zephyrians, and dozens of other species who had died fighting side by side. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we rebuild," Park replied. "The Devourers will return eventually, and when they do, we will be ready. Not as the Council with the Commonwealth as junior partners, and not as the Commonwealth with the Council as allies. As equals, working together because we choose to, not because we are forced to." The war against the Devourers continued for 3 more years, but the alliance forged its sanctuary never broke. Council species learned human flexibility, while humans gained from Council experience. New technologies emerged from the combination of different approaches to the same problems. Most importantly, both civilizations discovered that their differences were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be celebrated. When peace finally came, the galaxy was changed forever. The rigid hierarchy of the old Council was replaced by a new alliance where